Hey guys, Brian with Cajun Cardboard coming at you from the great state of Louisiana. And I'm excited to bring you the second episode of what was a very well received, first episode of Beckett Then and Now. I did a little intro. If you missed the video, go back and find it. I'll try to link it to the end of this video on the end screen. But we looked at 9 of Michael Jordan's best cards from an old Beckett magazine way back in 1998 and looked at what the values of those 9 Michael Jordan Grail cards were back then compared to what the value is now. And I did a little spreadsheet, and it was really more numbers based about how much has changed over the last 27 years. Well, today's video is going to be a little bit more of me talking, and we're going to kind of breeze through a few pages of the very first one. You guys know what I'm talking about. Everybody should have this burned into their brain. When this first came out, of course they chose Michael Jordan to be on issue number 1, April 1990. It was $2.95. It did hurt to buy this at my local card shop. I never purchased a subscription where I received it in the mail. I always bought it at my local card shop. I sort of just would go up there every weekend, kind of figure out when the next one was going to come out. But it was hurting because $2.95 back in 1990, that could have bought you, like 7 or 8 packs. That's like a quarter of a box of cards. But I would always bite the bullet to buy the Beckett Basketball Card magazine. And anyone with Michael Jordan on the cover obviously is burned and ingrained into my memory. So we're going to be looking at the very first ever Basketball Beckett magazine from March, April of 1990. And so the first place I want to start, I want to go here because the featured article in here was players of the 90s. Remember, this was at the turn of the decade. We had just finished the 80s. Bird and Magic had absolutely eradicated any opponents in their path, but for the 76ers. Of course, we had the Pistons, but nobody liked any of their players, so you're not going to hear any of those guys mentioned. Isaiah was obviously in the mix then. I guess people sort of liked Isaiah at that time, but the Pistons played a nasty brand of basketball. But they were trying to, in this Beckett issue number 1, prognosticate who the best players of the 90s would be at every single position. And you guys may not be able to see this on screen, but I'm going to sort of get in here. We're not going to read it word for word, but we're going to go position by position. The point guard that they chose on their first team point guard of the 90s, and this is funny because when you go back, you think, well, they didn't know about Jason Kidd. They didn't know about Penny Hardaway. Jason Kidd was 15 years old when this freaking magazine came out or something like that. Remember, his rookie was, I think, 94 or something. Maybe that's right. I think Penny Hardaway's rookie was, 93, I think, maybe. I can't remember, sorry. But they chose Mark Price for their first team point guard. Second team point guard, Kevin Johnson, after Jordan, he was literally my favorite player from the 90s. I loved Kevin Johnson. And then they said, for honorable mention, don't forget about the Knicks tandem of Mark Jackson and Rod Strickland. I thought that was hilarious. Both those guys are true pass first point guards, and they were on the same team back in New York in that era. So Mark Price first team, KJ's second team, and then Mark Jackson and Rod Strickland, honorable mention. Shooting guard, no brainer. We go with Michael Jordan on the first team. Who else? Of course, they're going to choose him. He was the cover boy of the issue. Second team, you're not going to believe this. They choose Hersey Hawkins. I don't know if you guys remember. I still remember seeing him play when he was at the University of Bradley. And he was an unbelievable shooter in college. He really kind of reminded me of a Buddy Hield type player. Let me know if you guys are old enough to remember Hersey Hawkins and you actually got to watch him play, if that's a good comparison. But that's kind of who I think about. Just a lights out shooter who could get his own in college, but when he got to the pros, he didn't have quite the escapability. He couldn't finish at the rim, so he wasn't really a 3-level scorer. Hield could never get to the rim and finish, and even his mid-range game was a little bit tough. Hersey Hawkins sort of experienced that same thing, but he had a beautiful, brilliant stroke, great-looking shot. And then Ron Harper, who was then a Los Angeles Clipper, was the honorable mention choice for the shooting guard position behind Jordan and behind Hersey Hawkins. And so we'll move on to the second page. And the second page, I just want to zoom in. There's your guy, Hersey Hawkins, right there. We got Mike Jaminski in the background. How great is that? It looks like Kenny Loggins with a mullet, but it's Mike Jaminski. I believe that's Mike Jaminski. And then you got Magic right here, who was, kind of winding down towards the end of his career just before the AIDS announcement. He's got the Converse Converse weapons on, which is what my team wore in high school in the late 80s. By the 90s, we weren't wearing Converse anymore, I don't think. We were actually allowed to wear our own shoes, which was very liberating, right? We didn't have to wear a team shoe. And then I'm almost positive, somebody jump in here, some of you old folks that were around at the turn of the decade in 1990, tell me, I think Hersey Hawkins is wearing Avias, and people who are watching now are going to be like, Cajun, what the hell's an Avia? There was a brand of shoe that came out, and they came out to challenge Converse and Nike and Adidas, and they were called Avias. And back then, Jordan had started to get the Air Jordan, so he had his shoes. Magic and Bird were sort of the face of Converse, and Doc, of course, as well. And then you had these other players like a Hersey Hawkins and a Dominique Wilkins and a Karl Malone. They were pimping for other shoe brands to kind of get into the basketball shoe market. Avia was one of them. I believe Clyde Drexler was Brooks. I think he wore Brooks just like, or maybe he was New Balance. I can't remember. And then Dominique Wilkins definitely wore Brooks. And then Karl Malone wore something called LA Gear. And it wasn't LA like Louisiana. It was like LA Los Angeles. So that was funny as well. But funny image there of Magic Johnson pretending to play defense and contest Hersey Hawkins. I don't remember Hersey Hawkins being left-handed, but it looks like he's shooting left-handed in this picture. But I think Magic might have just fouled him. But Hersey Hawkins almost certainly was right-handed from what I recall. I could be wrong. What about the small forward position? So we're working our way up. Small forward, they chose Barkley as a small forward. I guess at the time he was 6'4", 6'5", whatever. They put him at small forward. Maybe they didn't want to have to choose between him and the mailman, but they chose wisely when they chose Barkley as the small forward on the first team of the 90s. And then they chose Sean Elliott. Remember, they're kind of projecting forward. These are the dudes that we're going to hear about in the 90s. Well, they nailed it with Barkley, obviously. Dream team success, gold medal, got back to the finals, found out once and for all he was just not quite good enough to beat Jordan, even though his team was freaking awesome with Thunder Dan and those guys. Sean Elliott was chosen for the second team, Arizona Wildcat. I love Sean Elliott, but he ended up not probably being the right choice for that small forward position team of the 90s. Of course, Grant Hill would obviously take that and absolutely run with it. And then honorable mention, they got the X-Man, Xavier McDaniel, who was fun to play with in video games because back then, video games, all the players looked alike, but they had just started to get to that era where you could kind of make this player look different. So you'd get Kareem with goggles or Worthy with the goggles, and they would make Xavier McDaniel bald because he was always bald. A very intimidating figure, very good basketball player. And so the X-Man, Xavier McDaniel, was chosen as honorable mention small forward. Power forward, you get Karl Malone at number 1, and that was clearly hit the nail on the head. I would still say to this day he was the best power forward of the 90s. Tim Duncan's era was more, late 90s, but really it started to be more in the 2000s, of course. So Karl Malone certainly was the power forward of the 90s. You could argue Barkley. You couldn't argue McHale because his best years were behind him. So it was definitely Karl Malone for sure. And then John, of course, later in the decade, that's when Duncan and Dirk came along, and then it was a no-brainer. Those were the two that took it from there. Second team was John Williams, and it's not Hot Rod John Williams, not the goofy guy that played for the Cavs. It was the John Williams that played down here at LSU. Hot Plate Williams is what they called him because he had a weight issue, but he was an absolutely otherworldly talent who just never did pan out, probably because he was in Washington. But John Williams, believe it or not, as the most obscure name you're going to hear on this video today, was chosen as the second team power forward of the 90s. Center position, this is where it gets really funny. David Robinson first. Of course, he was as hot gets. He was more popular than Shaq, Jordan, everything. His cards were on fire. David Robinson was everything. Remember, he signed with the Spurs, but then did his... I think it might have been 2 full years with the Naval Academy that he had to do, years of service. So he missed 2 what would be great prime years, and then came in and won Rookie of the Year. But David Robinson was chosen as the first team center. Look who was chosen as the second team center, Patrick Ewing, which means we're leaving somebody pretty damn important out, and that is Hakeem Olajuwon. So remember, Shaq's not here yet. Shaq was 92, so they don't have Shaq in the mix. He was still a freshman probably, or maybe a sophomore at LSU or something like that, maybe a freshman. But then Hakeem Olajuwon, remember Hakeem with no H. He was Hakeem before he was Hakeem when he changed his name for his religion. But Olajuwon third behind Ewing and David Robinson. Robinson and Olajuwon, I can see that's kind of this for that. But obviously the 90s shook out very much in Hakeem Olajuwon's favor. David Robinson has a ring. Olajuwon got those 2 rings. And of course, Patrick Ewing never did get that ring. So that was an interesting article, I thought, where they were trying to figure it out. It would have been more fun if I'd have put more time into it and gone back and thought about who they could have chosen. Remember, they don't know anybody that's coming in. Alonzo Mourning and Shaq and Jason Kidd and Grant Hill and Kevin Garnett. They just don't know anything about these guys, right? Because they're not there yet. They're still babies. Here's a great image of David Robinson. He was, for those who aren't old enough to remember, he was absolutely otherworldly athletic. He was built in a way that no other 7-footer was. I'm sorry, none of those other 7-footers were shaped like David Robinson from a muscle striation standpoint and just how shredded he was. I think his military background with the Naval Academy kind of gave rise to that. The things he did in college at Navy were absolutely hilarious. Go back and look at his college basketball statistics. They were absolutely crazy. But also featured in this picture, I believe number 23 for the Bullets is the great Caldwell Jones. Somebody can double check me on that. I could be wrong. I think that's Caldwell Jones. That's me pulling from my old man brain 40 years ago. Of course, number 11, everybody should know, that's Mad Max, later Houston Rocket world champion. David Wingate right here from Georgetown fame and Baltimore Dunbar High School. And then Jeff Malone, the other Malone. He was actually very, very good. Jeff Malone was a great shooting guard in the NBA, really good score-first shooting guard in the NBA, next to David Wingate right there when he was on the Bullets. There's more in this issue. You guys got to remember these, right? I would be remiss if I brought up the original Beckett Basketball Magazine. We didn't talk about hot list and cold list. This was what we all cared about, right? We wanted to know who had 2 arrows going up, who had the arrows going down. And so number 1 on the list, surprise, surprise, Michael Jordan, David Robinson. Just like I promised you, Jordan and Robinson were so hot back then. Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Patrick Ewing, Isaiah Thomas, Karl Malone, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Dominique Wilkins, Charles Barkley. That's just a who's who, basically. Spud Webb has bust onto the scene as a slam dunk champion. 89-90 hoops, just the card product, was on the hot list. That's so funny because, Fleer was there was Star, Topps in 80 and 81, and then Star was the only licensed brand. And then Fleer came back, and then out of nowhere came this new brand, Hoops. And I remember when it came out because I bought the hell out of it. 89-90 hoops is listed number 12 on the hot list. Mitch Richmond, Olajuwon, Mullen, Pippen. By the way, is this not first ballot Hall of Fame city all the way down just about, except for Spud and except for Danny Manning? We even got Stockton Worthy and then sexy Rex Chapman, my hero in high school from Owensboro, Kentucky. Rex Chapman was my hero when I was a middle school player. He, of course, was at the University of Kentucky, one of the first big recruits post-probation, and he was an absolute jumping jack who could shoot the ball. Everything about Rex was everything to the University of Kentucky Wildcat fan base back then. The funny thing is, on the cold list, you got Larry Bird as well. So Bird was 4th on the hot list. Bird is 1st on the cold list. So I think his back had started acting up. I think people were done with Ralph Sampson. They had decided, you know what, we're good with Ralph Sampson. We don't think he's going to pan out. Charles Barkley and Isaiah Thomas, both from the hot list, are on the cold list. Same with Magic. Rick Mahorn. I think people just hated the freaking Pistons, and that's why you're going to see Isaiah and Rick Mahorn. The Cleveland Cavaliers, the entire team made the cold list, so that's nice to know. Kevin McHale, Danny Manning, and the Detroit Pistons' entire team made the cold list. So that kind of gives you an idea. Remember, these hot and cold lists were based on reader input, and so that's the result. What about some prices? Let's look at some numbers. We got to look at some. Well, I just wanted to pull up the 86, 87 Fleer, and I just wanted to show you that a Charles Barkley rookie card was anywhere from $15 to $30. Look at all the RCs next to these, and of course, you guys know the reason why. If you know anything about 86 Fleer, you know that Beckett didn't recognize Star as the rookie cards, and so the first appearance of all of these players from 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, that's 5 years of rookies in 1986 Fleer. So that's why you're going to see a damn RC next to all these guys' names, even though 86 might not actually have been their rookie card. Manute Bowles in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. They don't list every single player, but they list most of the players in here. Clyde Drexler rookie card. Why don't we talk about an even $5? How nice would that have been? The Jordan rookie card. That's the question everybody's going to ask. How much was the Jordan Cajun in 1990? Well, in the initial Beckett issue number 1, the Michael Jordan rookie card was $100 on the low end, $175 in mint condition. Patrick Ewing was $60. Let's go find Olajuwon. Patrick Ewing was $60. Karl Malone was $45. Mullen was 15. How about Ewing is 60? Olajuwon is 35. How about that? You guys go figure that out. Isaiah Thomas, of course, no David Robinson here, right? His rookie was an 89 hoops, which is part of the reason the product was so damn hot. He actually had 2 rookie cards in there. And then Isaiah Thomas is only $20 in here. Neek is 15. James Worthy is 12. What about the stickers? The Michael Jordan sticker rookie, 25 freaking dollars. $25. How funny is that? So just some funny prices to look at on those cards right there. And I thought you guys would enjoy that. And then the last thing we're going to look at is just a little, there used to be like a, readers would write in, and I don't know how they wrote in before the first issue, but readers would write in, and one of them, there's 2 here on that I want to talk about. Well, really just one I want to talk about. It's brokered down cards. So this reader writes in, and I'll just read it to you. I've recently been in touch with a card broker. Could you tell me a little bit more about such a dealer? I'm fairly new to this hobby, but I'm interested in making wise investments. Wow, so people are already looking at cards as investments in 1990, and a little profit if possible. Could you fill me in on the pros and cons of dealing with a card broker? This is Norm Dubois from California. And then the Beckett, I'm assuming this is Dr. Beckett, writes back, or maybe it's just his staff. A card broker is simply someone who invests in cards for clients, usually with the lure and or promise that he or she has inside information and will provide them with a substantial profit or a rate of return. While this sounds well and good, the truth of the matter is that unlike in the stock market, detailed information about cards and players is widely available. It should say is not widely available in these pages as well in countless other sports and hobby publications. Remember that the broker must make a profit for himself, so your net return would be less than if you had made the purchases yourself. Of course, it makes sense, right? It's like using consigners now. You're using people, you're paying them for a service, but you could make more if you just did all the work yourself. Finally, keep in mind there's a major fundamental difference between investing in cards and stocks. Selling securities, stocks, at a market price usually takes one quick phone call. Selling cards at market price often requires substantially more time and effort. Well, not anymore. It's really, really easy to sell your cards. All of those barriers that existed in 1990 at the time that this first Beckett issue came out, those have been removed, and it's actually quite simple to sell your cards right now with one simple click of a button on a Fanatics, on a Golden, using a card consigner. And I just thought it was funny that they talk about brokers, and it was like this novel idea that there was a card broker. And now you have great companies like Acquire, and you hear about dealer/broker. You see, people that put buyers and sellers in touch. I've even done a touch of that from time to time. Somebody reached out to me the other day with a very valuable baseball card, and they're like, I know you don't know baseball, but I know you know people. You think you could find me a buyer for a cut? And I'm like, sure, I'll try my best. That did not work out, but we actually came kind of close. So it's just funny that the idea of a card broker back then was so novel and unique and off the wall, and now there are so many people out there posing as experts in the hobby to help people, max out their cards for money. Some of the most annoying people on earth, actually, you can find. I don't look for them on Instagram, but for some reason they're funneled towards me, and they're telling you how easy it is to go make $1 million in cards and how you should quit your job and things like that. I don't recommend any of those things, and I certainly don't recommend listening to anybody who does that for a living. That's just my personal opinion. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this little trip back through memory lane of Beckett issue number 1. I do own multiple copies of this very Beckett issue number 1 in a CGC 9.8 slab. I just think it's really cool. I think it's going to be a great long-term investment. So I just stacked a bunch of them, and I'm way, way upside down. I bought them during 2021 or 22, I think. So I very much overpaid, but I've got some of them stacked up, and I'll hold them for another 10 or 20 years and see what happens. So thank you guys as always for watching. Hopefully you enjoy these Beckett Then and Now. If you ever want me to do a specific episode on a specific Beckett magazine or an article within one of these old magazines that you remember or that you've recently stumbled upon, please just reach out to me, DM me, let me know when it is, where it is, send me some pictures. I'd be happy to do another one. I'm just sort of randomly flipping through some of these Beckett magazines that I just happen to have in my office to put these episodes together. But if you've got a great idea or a funny article or an informative article or a shocking article about how much the hobby has changed in, oh my gosh, 35 years since this first Beckett came out, please send it my way and shoot me a DM on Instagram. I'll be happy to put something out there on the YouTube channel. Thank you guys as always for watching. Keep collecting, stay positive in the hobby, and peace.